So let's look more deeply at the nature of these collision courses between collaboration and polarization and the subsequent polarization risk that is created. We've identified 5 areas of a business's world where polarization risk appears as a corporate delivers and communicates its overall strategy. And these are firstly, where the business is acting on issues relating to the future health of the planet. Secondly, where a business is delivering on an overarching purpose, particularly if that purpose is based on achieving social outcomes. Thirdly, when a business is promoting a product or brand, particularly if the theme of that promotion is related to its wider role or purpose in society. Fourthly, in the workplace itself, when a company's people bring their own polarizing views into the workplace, or a company's policies clash with their employees' personal values or sense of identity. And finally, when a company may look to align itself with a new government and its leadership may undertake a political pivot. For example, as we've seen with the tech sector in the US and the way that it has gone about aligning itself to the new administration on the other side of the pond.
So let's look at just one of those 5 Ps. Let's look at planet. And just as an example, let's look at the dairy cooperative called Arla. So if you look at the bottom right there, you'll see a bunch of products that you might recognize in the supermarket, the grocery store. And so Arla, the dairy cooperative, was really interested in tackling the grand challenge of climate change. And if you think about food production and how food production contributes to emissions, one of the big things when you're a dairy cooperative is cows and cows' emissions, and specifically methane. Can you see CH4 at the bottom right there? So some studies actually would argue that CH4, methane's contribution to global warming is 80 times that of CO2, carbon dioxide. So this is a big problem. So they thought, okay, how can we mitigate methane emissions? They came up with a product called Bovier, B-O-V-A-E-R, Bovier, which is an additive to cow feed. So they developed this product, testing it. They ran a trial with 30 farmers. So far, so good, you might think. Not so much. What happened was they walked into a firestorm, a real backlash from various stakeholders about suspicion, distrust, questioning their motives around why are you doing this? And it led to a boycott. You can see the hashtag boycott Arla. Videos of consumers pouring Arla products down the drain, farmers wanting to saying, no, we're not part of the trial. We don't add this stuff to our milk, right? Or we don't feed it to our cows. And retailers having to say, no, we don't stock Arla products with this additive. And even other companies being drawn into this. So Year Valley was accused of being part of this trial. Year Valley's nothing to do with Arla. It's just, it sells yogurt, amongst other things. And then finally, let's just touch on misinformation. Can you see the article at the top right there, which talks about Bill Gates' involvement? Bill Gates wasn't involved. So he's doing this to depopulate the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He had invested in a competitor additive called Ruminate, right? So completely parallel, but can you see how all of this just spirals out of control? And at the heart of this firestorm is actually the issue of identity. Social identity, i.e. which groups do we belong to, and political social identity. What are the interests and political interests I have in a particular topic? So you start off with food additives and methane, and look where we end up, right? You're having to contend with climate skepticism, as opposed to what Arla's trying to do with reducing emissions. You're having to contend with not just suspicion, but distrust of experts, scientists, and not only their expertise, but their motives. Why are you doing this, right? Compared with, in opposition to evidence-based scientific inquiry. And then finally, you're contending with freedom of choice. I want to know what I'm putting in my body, and I want to have control over it. And I don't trust you to do this, right? Versus importance of controlling standards of regulation, etc. So a whole bunch of issues that come out of this apparent need or desire to address a grand challenge.